So, Paul, I want to welcome you to another episode of Seasoned Conversations with Salt. I think we're going to take a little different twist here. Normally, it's just Salt colleagues talking to Salt colleagues. So you're a special guest on this one. If you don't mind, maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do at KPMG, and then we can take it from there.
Jeff, thanks. I appreciate it, and I am definitely excited to be the first non-salty fellow to join your podcast. So for those out in the audience who don't know, my name is Paul Glunt. I'm a principal in KPMG's value chain management practice. I sit in Southern California, but as you know, prior to COVID, I spent most of my time on planes traveling the country because our value chain management practice is a national practice. It's really focused on kind of taking a different perspective on tax. So rather than thinking about tax first, we really try to think about business first. And we think about what issues are happening in a business. And then we try to craft a solution around that for tax. So rather than thinking foreign tax credits, for example, we really are thinking, oh, a company is going through changes in procurement, or a company is going through digitalization, or it's struggling with issues around cyber and cyber breaches. And we kind of come to the table thinking, hey, you've got this business issue. Let's focus on that and how we can craft a tax solution that kind of aligns with that.
No, that's perfect, Paul. And I think, if you look back at value chain management as a whole, maybe even 2 years ago, me being fairly new to the VCM practice, there was a heavy international focus, and that's evolved over the last couple of years. Maybe you could talk a little bit about, the shift in thought around it's not just international. Salt plays a big role in this as well.
Jeff, that's exactly right. There is this misconception these days that VCM is international tax planning. And I think it draws from in the past, it really was a big focus because in the old days, before we had tax reform, both on the US side and globally, doing international tax allowed a lot of US taxpayers to move from a 40% combined tax rate to zero. So there was a lot of motivation to do that. But in the last couple of years, it's really evolved because the concept around value chain management is focusing on where value sits and having a rate arbitrage. If you break it down to its most simple blocks, I think of it as value and rate arbitrage. And so there's still a lot of play from an international perspective, whether you are sitting in the US and exporting, or whether you're base eroding the US, Germany, and France into a place like Ireland. But the same concepts apply from a state perspective. And so we're seeing an increased focus on applying these concepts on the state perspective. You're still looking at value the same way. You're still using the building blocks the same way, but the tax rules obviously are very different and probably a little bit more complicated on the state side. And what's actually interesting is we also are seeing a little bit more traction on non-state federal work. So if you think about applying value chain concepts to an organization that's privately held that has C Corps and S Corps, or we have some clients where we're applying the same concepts between a regulated side of the business and a non-regulated side, such as certain insurance companies that help also have operating businesses. And so for the audience, they probably are aware that, you, Jeff, are, in addition to being a SALT guy, you are a SALT VCM guy. And I would say that, when we were lucky enough to have you join our team, that really kind of was symbolic of, how important the SALT VCM planning has gotten. And it's really become a very robust group of tax planning opportunities out there. And it's something we're seeing a lot more interest from our clients to go out there and align their SALT tax planning around their business. So it's all pretty exciting times.
Yeah, well said, Paul. And I think, another thing to add to that too is that we've really seen an integration with what's actually happening from an international perspective, as there's, a complete impact to the state and local tax level as well. And who knows what's going to happen from a tax reform perspective going forward, but I suspect additional impacts there as well. And so I think it's been a great combination of not only taking that VCM concept and applying it at the domestic level for state tax purposes, but then what's that tie-in and integration point with international?
Exactly. It reminds me of, I was on a call this morning with a client where we're putting in, an international structure. Most people involved think of it as international structure. The company has put a digital center of excellence in place in Ireland. And so the US company now gets big deductions to buy software that it uses internally from its Irish affiliate. And everybody thinks about the subpart F issues, the transfer pricing issues. But the call we had today was on our sales and use tax component, because frankly, this giant global tax plan falls apart completely if you stub your foot on the sales and use tax side, which in this fact pattern could trigger a 6% tax on the gross. And so it is interesting that people, even in the global context, aren't as focused as they should be on the state side, because not only does it give you incremental benefit to your global plan, it also kind of creates some of these kind of blind spots that if you're not thinking about it and planning correctly could really blow something up.
Yeah, perfect. I completely agree with that. I think the last thing before we go, I'll ask you, and I usually ask this of everyone we talk to on these episodes is, if you were to leave the audience with one thing to think about, what would that be?
I would have to say, not to be a tax nerd and focus on work. I'm sure some people say very profound things. The one parting shot I would say is to really take a fresh look at what's happening in your organization, whether it's how your company is digitizing, how you're thinking about your people strategy, whether it's remote worker, whether it's how you utilize processes to enable your people. And don't think about that as part of the business. Think of it as an opportunity to create some tax planning and really take a fresh look at how that affects your end-to-end value chain. I think, if you're a tax practitioner and you do that, you will have lots of good things on the horizon.
Great. Well, Paul, I want to thank you for jumping on this episode. It's been great speaking with you. I think we've absolutely covered some very relevant topics. Thanks again for your time, and I look forward to catching up with you soon.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. It was a pleasure.